What's up, beautiful people? This is Christian from the Successful Spiritualpreneur Podcast, and today I'm super excited to have Justin Schenck on the show. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, and the host of the top-rated podcast Growth Now Movement. He has been named one of the top or the top 8 podcaster to follow by Inc. magazine, featured in Thrive Global, and chosen as icon of influence in the new media space. Justin's podcast has grown to become a podcast that is currently getting played in over 100 countries every single week, and he has gone to help countless people grow their brands and businesses with his company, Podbrand.io. He's also the host and creator of one of the go-to events for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers, the Growth Now Summit Live. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Dude, thank you so much, Christian. I'm excited to dive in and get to know each other a little bit more on this call.
I know that's my favorite part on podcasts. Just like, oftentimes I wish to sit here with clients, and then before we do that, like branding or website stuff as part of our agency, it's like, oh, we totally forgot about that one. But yeah, tell me more about Growth Now Movement. How'd you get into it? Like, what inspires you to, what makes you so fired up about it? And it sounds like such a cool movement. So yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, right? So I started podcasting 9 years ago. As a matter of fact, just a couple days ago, we passed the 9-year anniversary of launching the podcast. And to kind of put that in context, if I told people I had a podcast 9 years ago, the response is, what's a podcast, right? And now we fast forward 9 years later and it's like, oh God, you have a podcast too. Everybody's got one, right? And so to see the evolution of that medium has just been so incredible. But I was lucky enough that I got in early. And the original concept behind the show was I wanted to interview entrepreneurs, figure out how to be a better entrepreneur. Because up until that point in my life, I had 3 failed businesses. All signs pointed to I can't really figure this out, right? I wasn't a great student. As a matter of fact, in high school at one point, I had a 1.7 GPA. My mom was in the middle of a 20-year opioid battle, and my dad was in jail. And so I didn't know what I was going to do or what I was going to be, but I wanted to create my own path. And so entrepreneurship was always something that called to me. And I was like, well, let me interview entrepreneurs. And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost her battle to opioids. And it completely changed my entire thought process about what is life all about? Like, what am I really chasing? What am I going after in life? And, obviously as men, we're taught that you go get the money, you go get the house, you go get the car, you go get the girl, and then you can be happy, right? Like those are the things society says. If you go have these things, all of a sudden you'll be happy. And so when my mom passed away, I really dove deep into conversation with people and started asking them about, their rock bottom moments and how they overcame limiting beliefs. And, from there, it really began to build a foundation for me. And here's the crazy part, man. I had 2 realizations after my mom passed away. The first one was she didn't die because she was an addict. She died because she didn't love herself. And the second piece was I also didn't love myself either. And it was this great realization. And so the podcast took off. I started making money with some businesses that I launched outside of it. Started speaking all over the country, getting accolades, some of which you mentioned. And I got all those things. Society said if I get it, I can love myself, and I didn't. I still hated myself, and I think that's where the journey really began for me personally. Was okay. How do I really figure this out? How do I begin to love myself and lean more into my purpose?
Beautiful, yeah. And I think that's where a lot of times, there's like yin and yang, like the masculine and the feminine, right? Like how much are you in balance? How do you find your balance point is something that I constantly come back to is also on this show and also for myself. And with that being said, it's like I feel people who are, let's say, spiritual entrepreneurs, oftentimes they come from like a love space and don't have the business mind. And then you have the other side of people who come from the business side and kind of have seen the emptiness from that side. I'm just like, yeah, I've had it all, but it's just not there. You know what I mean? So on this show, we're really trying to like be like with one leg in the matrix and the other one outside of it kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
where's your balance point? And like tell us how can we be more business minded if we're spiritual, or how can we be more spiritual if we're business minded?
Well, I think the end of the day is the realization of like we are a spiritual being in a human body trying to experience human things. And I think a lot of times when you talk about the spiritual side, right, the woo woo, the over the top, not grounded in reality, they forget the fact that they're supposed to be here to learn human things and still act like a human, right? And so I think for me, finding the balance is the understanding that like yes, my spirit and my soul have a higher purpose. But it's the human part of me that has to take action in order to create that purpose, right? And without action, we're nothing, right? I always say, like, what's not growing is dead. And so action is something that's necessary in order to create anything. Whereas the spiritual side is more of like sit back and manifest, right? And I do believe in a sense of visualization and manifestation. But the way I kind of look at it is I have a daily visualization practice that I do that will put me, whether it's 5-10 minutes, it's not long, right? But it's daily, where I'll put myself in a situation where I want to belong, right? So my event's coming up. I'm sure this episode will come out after my event, but April 4th is my event, and I've daily been visualizing myself on the stage. What will the people, sound like and be like? What will the hugs feel like? What will it smell like in that room? All those things, right? And tie myself to all 5 senses. But what that does from a manifestation standpoint in my mind is I get so excited about it because I've put myself there, that the action piece becomes easier to take, right? And I think that that's kind of how I stay grounded in both sides, is like the understanding that you have to dream, you have to manifest, you have to, believe in that higher power type of thought process, but the human part of you has to take action. And we do that in multiple ways, right? It's about, getting on sales calls. It's about generating leads. It's about getting in front of the right people. It's about showing up and doing the big scary thing, and not thinking it's just going to magically appear. And for me, like, it took a while to find that balance, because I was very much, like you said masculine and feminine, very much in my masculine for a very long time, of like rah, action, take action, push hard, keep going. And now my balance is, how do I work less and make more? How do I lean more into my hobbies and the things that I love and the people that I love? And we do that by creating the right experiences for other people. And I think that's kind of the beauty of my evolution, is like spirituality has become so much more apparent the last 5 or 6 years of my life, that's become a whole new journey, and that I feel like I'm still discovering and still unlocking in many ways.
So cool. So tell us how, everybody's always growing, right? So how can we grow? What are we going to learn on the growth now movement, or the event even?
Yeah, growth is funny, right? It's not linear, right? There's ups and downs no matter what you do, but it's a constant. Again, going back to what I said earlier, what's not growing is dead. And so we have to constantly be evolving. There's no end point to this, right? Like, there's no all of a sudden we're going to get to a point and go, oh, everything's great. And so it's that constant evolution until we take our last human breath. And I think part of that is like, look, if we first have to realize our full potential, right? And a lot of times it's getting in the right rooms, it's having the right conversations, the right mentors, the right people guiding you. But the second piece is we have to get rid of those limiting beliefs that we carry with, around with ourselves. We all have limiting beliefs. Like, I'm friends with people who are multi-billionaires and celebrities and all these people. And I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you that these people also have limiting beliefs, right? But it's about being able to take action to overcome those limiting beliefs. And once you do that, you can then aspire to grow into the person you're meant to be. And so a number of years ago, I really kind of realized that I had this process in order to overcome and squash the limiting beliefs that I have in my life. And so I started to do some research, and I was like, well, where did limiting beliefs even come from, right? Like, where do these even manifest from? Why am I thinking the things that I'm thinking? And after some research, I realized they come from 4 main places. And so the first one is childhood. And this could literally be as simple as you're walking through the mall with your mom when you were a little kid, and she runs into somebody from college, and they're so excited to see each other, and they're like, oh my gosh. And, you hide behind your mom's leg, and your mom goes, oh, that's Christian. He's just shy. That simple statement will then be implanted in your brain that you're shy, right? And that's why all of a sudden we go, oh, I can't be a public speaker. I can't start a podcast. I'm too shy. I can't go start a conversation with a stranger. I'm too shy. But the reality is, it was just a passing comment from when you were 4 years old that your mom, brushed aside. And she didn't do it harmfully, but it's just how that works, right? So that's the first place, is childhood. Second place is self. And so I'll tell another childhood story that could lead to something like this. But say you have a crush on a girl in middle school, and you go ask her out. And she goes, oh, no, I'm interested in dating Bobby instead, right? You then go look in the mirror and you go, oh, man, nobody loves you. You're ugly. She doesn't like you because you're ugly. You're this, you're that, you're dumb, right? And we start to write our own narrative. She didn't say that. She just simply said she was interested in somebody else. But you start to write your own narratives. That's the second place. Third place is society. Society says, you're a minority, you can't do that. Society says you're a female, you can't be that. Society says you're this, you can't go on to do that. And we can choose to believe that or not. And unfortunately, a lot of people believe that. And that's the third place. And then the fourth place is a little bit deeper. It's what Gabby Bernstein calls the big T trauma. And the big T trauma is essentially like something that happened to us in our lifetime that we completely wash from our memory, but it's still energized into our body through our subconscious. A lot of times it's, not to be crude, but it's sexual molestation or things that sometimes people go through as a child that they forget about, but that trauma is still carried through them, and that can create limiting beliefs. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to identify, where does this limiting belief come from? Mine was, I'm not enough, right? So I'm not enough for love. I'm not enough for success. I'm not enough for all these things. And that stems to my childhood for a number of reasons. But what I realized was there's a process to overcome these, and I'd love to share them if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a 3-step process. So it's very simple, but it's not easy. The first step is you have to get uncomfortable, right? So we have to get uncomfortable in our bodies, right? You talk about spirituality on this podcast a lot, and kind of the mixture of the two. The way I humanize spirituality is that we are all energy, right? People can't argue that. We're protons, neutrons, and electrons. We are all energy. Everything is energy. And so the first part about getting uncomfortable is we have to disrupt that energy that's in our body in order to rewrite our brain and our neural pathways to say this is not true, right? And so I say it like this, right? So if somebody's limiting belief is, I can't get in shape, I say what I want you to do is I want you to publicly commit to a challenge of some kind that will force you into doing something really hard, right? So like doing something like 75 hard, which was created by Andy Frisella, like publicly admit it, right? So now you're uncomfortable. Not only did you publicly admit that I'm going to go do this crazy thing, and all of a sudden you feel like you can't handle it, but now everybody's going to hold you accountable, right? So that's number one. You have to get uncomfortable. The second piece is you have to surround yourself with the right people. This is a really important piece because getting uncomfortable is really uncomfortable. And if you don't have the right people to support you through that process, you will fail. And then the third piece is you have to take action because nothing works unless you do. And so whatever it is you're trying to overcome, you have to put in the work. Whether that's as something as simple as like, okay, hey, I'm going to the therapist and I'm truly talking about my feelings every single week, and I'm putting in the work every single week from whatever homework that therapist gives me, or making sure that I'm admitting my faults truly to my coach, who will then coach me through the work I have to do. You have to take the action in order to overcome them. And then over time, these limiting beliefs will get quieter and quieter. And I realized that my limiting beliefs aren't gone. Every time I decide I'm going to do something crazy, I think, who am I to do this? But I can very quickly quiet them with that 3-step process. And I think that that's been a life changer for me and so many people that I've been able to mentor, because look, limiting beliefs are all real. We all have them. We have to be able to work through them. And that's the process in order to really overcome them over time.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And I think, sometimes we onboard new clients, or you might have some clients or coaching, people that you coach. And then at some point you outline the strategy, right? And then you're just like this big ass strategy that, you're just like, oh my God, this is going to be so epic. But then at some point you get to this point where that person gets to the point where you can't execute on that strategy anymore, or you stop somehow. It's like, that's where those limiting beliefs come in, and I always say the limiting beliefs, like doing the internal work, is the feminine side of strategy, right? It's the masculine side of like putting it on a map, doing it every day. No excuse, right? But what's in the background, what's going on that's maybe preventing you from taking that action, those are the limiting beliefs. So I'm happy you outlined, how to handle those. It's really important. And yeah, we all have them, so
Yeah. Yeah, it's the stories that we tell ourselves, right? We all have stories around money. We all have stories around who we think we can be. We all have stories of all those things. And it's like, the question is, can you rewrite that in order to create that success in your business and in your life, right? And a lot of times, like you said, I love the fact that you said, like, sometimes we work with clients and we're working through things, and all of a sudden they stop doing what they're supposed to be doing, or we can't execute on that next thing because of whatever. I've worked in the podcast space for a very long time. Do you know how many people have come to me and said, I want to start a podcast, and they just never do? Like, I mean, throughout my 9 years of podcasting, I would say thousands of people have told me, hey, I want to start a podcast. A lot of them said, because, hey, you can do it, I can do it, which I love hearing, and I go, great, start. And then I see them 4 years later and they go, oh man, I still want to start that podcast. And the reality is, like, think about how far along you'd be if you had just started 4 years prior. But somewhere in the back of your head, there's a limiting belief telling you that you shouldn't have a podcast. And so this is just reality, and what a lot of people do, how they sabotage themselves. They could have success, but like, what could the success be if you could rewrite those narratives and stop telling yourself those stories? So I'm so glad you tied that into just that action within your business.
Yeah. And what type of content, experts, panelists can we expect on the Growth Now summit? And will there be a recording? Because, this podcast will most likely air after the actual summit.
Yeah.
Will there be a recording?
Yeah, dude, it's a really good question. So throughout the event, so I call this event a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers. Since this is coming out after, I will say there will be another one in 2026. In April of 2026, we're doing it again, and we're calling it the Growth Now Summit 10 Years of Growth, because it's 10 years of the podcast. Don't tell anybody. You're the first person I ever told that to, other than my wife. So they got some insider news. But with that being said, the event is a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers, incredible speakers who are motivating, panelists who talk about business and mindset growth and all those other things. So we dive deep. But here's the most important part about my event. It's about human connection, right? Like, let's be real with ourselves. Any information you need in order to start that business, grow your business, whatever, it can be found in Google. But what changes and what moves the needle for people is the community you surround yourself with. I'm a big believer in masterminds. I run one myself called the Skeleton Key Mastermind. I'm a big believer in coaches. I'm a big believer in attending events, not only to learn, but to also connect with other humans. And the one thing that I've created is a really great community of people who give first without expectation. And I think that changes the game. The room's filled with powerful people who are going to literally pour into every single other person that's there. And it's a ton of fun, man. We have a lot of fun. We have an after party. We've got a VIP welcome reception. We've got all those things. And to answer the second part of your question, there will not be a recording. And I'll tell you why. I believe in the power of being in the room. And I did this event at first first time I did it was in 2019. There was no recording. We all know what happened in 2020, right? We went virtual. So I found a way to do virtual events a little bit differently, where it felt like everybody was in the same room. And so I did 2 or 3 of those during that time when the world was shut down. We brought the event back in 2022. I streamed it. There were plenty of people watching. Don't ever want to do it again. They were so disconnected. I never heard from them again. And so here we are back in person, 2025. 2026, we are in person in a theater in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I believe in the power of being in the room. And who can you meet that changes your life? I think that's really the question we need to start asking ourselves when we go to events, when we go to masterminds. Who am I going to meet today that we can help each other and push each other forward? I think that's a powerful question that people need to ask themselves more.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I think it's really great they create that boundary, because that will attract the people that are actually ready for that type of transformation. And so it will enhance the energy in the room rather than just like dilute it,
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing. Like, it's funny. You asked me the question in the beginning, and it would have taken me too long to get there, but we're here now. You asked, like, talk about the movement. So I actually called my podcast the Growth Now Movement because I didn't like the name Growth Now Podcast. And I was like, but Growth Now doesn't feel complete enough. So I have to like put a different word there. And it was movement. I was like, oh, that'd be cool if we created a movement. There was no conscious of like, oh, like all of a sudden the show's going to get, 3 to 4 million downloads over time. That's not going to, I never thought I'd grow an audience. Like I wasn't thinking that. And so I just threw a word in there. And I had a real aha moment about 2 months ago when I was looking at the attendee list of people who have already bought tickets to the event 2 months ago. And these are people that were formerly guests on my podcast, were former keynote speakers of my event, who are buying tickets and showing up because they want to be in the room. And I said to myself, 9 years later, I finally said, oh, this is the movement that we've been talking about. It's about high-level people who are willing to pour into others, no matter where you are in your journey, and they want to support each other. And this is truly the movement. And this room is going to be stacked with incredible human beings. And I'm fired up, dude. Like, we're real close right now. Like, we're 2 weeks out. This is real excitement. Like, I cannot wait to be in that room. And so, yeah, man, hopefully people can come out for 2026. If they go to growthnowsummit.com, they can get their tickets.
Beautiful. And tell us a little bit more about, like, apart from the speaking and all the community building that you do, like, what type of products or services do you offer if people say like, yo, I really love Justin, I love what he's up to, they might look deeper into you and be like, yeah, this guy's very cool. Like, so how can people engage you in whatever way?
Yeah, so it all kind of depends, right? So I have a mastermind for entrepreneurs. It is an invite-only mastermind called the Skeleton Key Mastermind. If somebody's interested, they can reach out to me on Instagram, and I can hop on a call with them and see if they might be a fit. That's one way they can work with me. That's probably the best way. That's one of my favorite things I've ever built is the Skeleton Key Mastermind. If they're a podcaster looking to create social media content, we started a company called Podbrand, which is essentially real people editing real video versus AI, which AI is dampening all over social media. So we usually work with higher end individuals who are interviewing big names who might want to be using that specific B-roll, all that stuff versus AI B-roll. So for an example, I just had Kurt Angle on my podcast from the WWE. And so we were able to obviously create content with like real, him wrestling and him getting a gold medal in the Olympics medals or in the Olympics and all that stuff. And so, Podbrand is a good way if they're a podcaster to work with us. But other than that, I do some one-on-one consulting, but I'm really, really picky with who I work with because I told you earlier, like, how do I work less and make more is my ultimate goal in life. And so if they want to work with me consulting, building a brand and really kind of boosting whatever they're doing, they can do that. But I'm very, very selective with who I work with.
Nice. And how have you found the way to work less and enjoy more of what you do through like the way you monetize and like, yeah, you know what, like the mastermind, just, 5 people that does it for me, like how have you found your way to do that?
Yeah. So, what happened was COVID really opened my eyes to how much I was working and traveling and doing all these things. And when COVID happened, I lost 75% of my income overnight. And I ended up hiring a coach to help me figure out how do I replace this income as quickly as possible. And on our first call, he said, what do you want to do? I go, honestly, man, I just want to get paid to be me. And so we built out structures that were very, very passive, right? So the immediate thing was we built a course, which is no longer available, but we built a course that was available for about 1.5 years. It did really, really well. We ended up shutting that down just because I've shifted so many things. And it was in the podcast space. It was lack of a better term, it was a money grab. It helped people, but it was a money grab. I needed the cash. And then I was like, okay, well, what else can we do? Right. And so we started to talk about more like group coaching. And I said, I want to do group coaching, but I love community. So let's build a mastermind. So we did that. And then, beyond that, what we did was I really look at business differently now. And so like Podbrand, for example, I'll share numbers if you want. Like Podbrand, for example, I was working with a designer in India. His name's Vivek. He's amazing. He's a great designer, great editor, great all these things. And I gave him work throughout the years for my clients, for myself. And like, I would just be like, oh yeah, use him. And he reached out to me one day and he goes, hey man, you sent me so much business over the years. Like, do you want to start something together? And I was like, oh yeah, but I don't want to work a lot. So what's this going to look like? And so he goes, well, how about I'll handle everything, right? Like you'll help kind of onboard, which I don't do that anymore, but you'll help the onboard and then we'll take care of it from there. I was like, great, here's how it's going to work. So I want 60%. I want 60% of all the income that comes in. I'll pay you 40%. But as we grow and scale, you have to hire people in India under you with that 40%. And so now it's very, very passive, a couple hours a month. But I make 60% no matter what. No matter how big the company is going to grow, I will always make a 60% profit. And he's living his best life. Like I literally said to him, I was like, how much money do you need a month to live the life you want to live? He told me. I was like, done. Right. And so we were able to build the dream life for him. He just bought a motorcycle. He's got a beautiful little daughter. And so like, it's really cool to see. But it's about being strategic, right? I always ask myself before any opportunity comes my way, I go, well, how much time will this take? And if it does, if it's not worth the squeeze, I'm not doing it. And so it's just about being strategic. It's about entering a season of no and saying no more than yes. And, allowing yourself to truly be clear on what it is you really want. My goal isn't to be a multimillionaire. My goal is to do well enough to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it with. I don't need multiple millions of dollars a year to do that, right? And so that's really kind of my focus is like, how do I build the life that I want versus the business that I think that'll support that life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's where a lot of people, and I guess we all go through that phase of like you have to reach like your top or that moment of like, I've put all this work in, made all this money, and this is all great, but I don't live, I don't do the, it's like, okay, let me redefine what success looks like for me. It's like that is a point that everybody I think has to arrive to at some point,
Yeah, one thing we do in our mastermind, we'll sit down and be like, "What's your financial goal this year?" Right? And so, I'm making these numbers up, but say somebody goes, "Oh, it's $1 million this year." Okay, great. Now, what do you want your life to look like? How many vacations do you want to take? What kind of clothes are you wearing? What kind of car are you driving? What kind of, are you buying a house? What are you doing? Are you upgrading, or what, where are you at? Right. And we'll break down what they want their life to look like. And we say, okay, well, how much money do you think you need in order to do that? And a lot of times it's a lot less than their actual financial goal, right? Like financial goals are just plucked out of the air. Be like, oh, somebody said I should be 7 figures, so my goal is $1 million. Great. Let's see if we can get you there, but you don't need that if you don't want to. So why don't we make it $400,000, which will make this easier. You'll work less. You'll spend more time with your family. You'll be able to travel more. You won't be stuck behind a desk all day. Like, I'd much rather do that and still do the things that I want to do than go just chase $1 million just because somebody said I should have 2 commas in my paycheck.
Yeah, so true. And it comes down to, again, redefining that success for yourself and really seeing, what is the life I want to live, So
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, a couple, more personal questions, like who or what inspires you currently on your spiritual or entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, man. So I actually have 5 key people in my life who inspire me and push me and do all these things. And so I've actually come up with these 5 roles that people should have. Everybody should have these 5 people in their life, and I'll go through them very, very quickly. It's a cheerleader, a bruiser, a mentor, softie, and a coach. And these are the 5 people that I think you need in your life at any given time. Obviously, they evolve and change, but like, these are people that support me through that journey. And those are the people who inspire me. And my softie is my wife. And so the fact that, hey, we get to live this life together and do cool things together, that inspires me. My cheerleader is a guy who ended up marrying me and my wife. And I've known him for years, a great business mind, a great human being. And so like, these are the people that help inspire me to continue to grow, in all areas of my life. And it's very strategic and it's very on purpose. And I love every single one of them dearly. I'd give them the shirt off my back. And those are the people that inspire me to continue to push.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's such a powerful, just strategy or just thing to apply, framework to apply to your life. Like, surround yourself with 5 people that you really, support your growth, and your evolution. When it comes to your legacy, this is a question to a little think about. Like, what are 3 words you want people to know you for after you leave this physical plane?
3 words.
Yeah, take a second there.
Giving, loving, humble.
Beautiful. And what is your vision of the new earth? So, however you define that and how the world is gonna, develop, like, what's your vision?
Yeah, how I think it's going to go or how I want it to go is the question.
How you want it to go?
Yeah, man. I think
that's how it's gonna go ultimately.
Yeah, look, I think one thing people don't realize is how we're all connected, even if we don't feel connected. There's purposeful divide pushed around the world. But when it comes from a spiritual place, we're all connected in so many deep ways. And so what I would love to see is more unity, more acceptance. One thing I've been saying a lot lately is curiosity is a superpower. And I believe if people were more curious as to why people are the way they are, more curious as to why people are making the decisions that they're making, and truly curious, not from a curious standpoint of like, now I need to tell them they're doing it wrong. I think that would change the game, right? And so I would say a more curious world of people who are willing to realize that, a rising tide rises all ships. And so if we're able to really kind of find that total connection, I think it would be a beautiful thing. And I don't know, it won't happen in my lifetime, but maybe someday in future lifetimes, we'll be able to see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, it's going to happen. It's going to happen sooner than you think, like people need to work stuff out, but everybody wants the same, I feel,
Yeah, it's wild, right? We all want the same thing, but we all want it a different way. And that's the problem.
I know. So yeah, we're coming to, the close of the episode, and, that part I always like to give over to the guests and just ask them, do some future visioning, some future goals. Like, what are your future goals as a spiritual entrepreneur, as a company, as a brand? Like, what are you looking to call in the years to come?
Yeah, man. I just said this to my wife last night at dinner. So my goal in the next year, meaning from this event, April 6th, the event next year, which will be later, I think it's April 24th. It's like the last Friday of the April. there's two big things. Obviously, three big things. One, we want to grow the event itself. We want more people to attend and be a part of this incredible time. But there's two big things. I want to finish the book that I'm writing, which is about those 5 people that we discussed, and also land a TED Talk, which it's crazy. Back in the day, pre-COVID, it was like 2019, I got offered a TED Talk, which it was being held at a local college here. And I said no because I didn't have a TED Talk at the time. And so now I'm like, okay, I have a TED Talk now. So it's about being intentional, about timing it right, about doing all those things. So I'd say in the next calendar year, we'll have the book done, and I will be on a TED Talk or TEDx stage, along with some other fun things sprinkled in, which we haven't announced yet. But dude, you got a lot of new things out of me, which is the announcement of next year's event, the 2 big goals for the year. This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much, for being on and sharing all your wisdom, your insight, your heart, and for inspiring us all to grow, every single day. I appreciate that. And just let us know any last words for the audience, and then of course where people can find you, where they can, buy a ticket.
Yeah, I'll leave them with this thought. There's something I heard a long time ago that I now repeat a lot of times when I'm speaking on stages, which is you are exactly where you are supposed to be and exactly where you chose to be. And I remember when I heard that, I got a little butthurt because I was like, I don't like where I am. How are you saying I chose this? And it can be painful if you don't love where you are right now. But the beauty of that statement is that means you get to choose where you're going. That means your actions today change your future. Just 1% every day is the goal, right? How do we get better 1% every single day? And so, yes, that quote can sting, but I think it's powerful because it means you have complete control over where you're going. And one thing is, I believe my purpose is to let people know that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't even matter where you are today. What matters are the decisions you make today to create a better tomorrow for yourself and the people around you. And I think that's where I want to leave people there. And if they're interested, if they like this conversation, they can find my podcast by searching Growth Now. It'll pop up. I always say, check out a couple episodes. If you like it, click subscribe and come on the journey with me because we're all on this journey. And then depending on when this comes out, either way, tickets will be for sale, growthnowsummit.com. They can either grab tickets for this year if it comes out soon, or they can grab tickets for next year if it's after.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much for being on, Justin. It's been a true honor.
Thanks, Christian.